our search for real discoveries. Many people were shocked and fascinated when they saw our last documentary, Our Search for Sodom and Gomorrah. The sight of the ghostly walls and buildings of the ancient cities, standing in the desert beside the Dead Sea, struck a deep chord with so many people. With the aid of Simon's explanations of the biblical accounts, the cities lived once more. It was obvious things could not stop there, and he once again invites you to accompany him and his friends back to the Holy Land to try to animate the Bible's stories. The more Simon studied, the more he learned about this fascinating area. He read the archaeologists had discovered what they believed to be the very cave where Lot and his daughters sheltered, and that the tombs of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob do indeed exist to this day. He also found that on the last trip to the Dead Sea area, he and his team had often passed a place named Engedi, with no idea as to its historical importance. In fact, King David had hidden from King Saul in this secluded and fertile place. Sodom and Gomorrah are revisited during the search for Admah and the small town of Zoar, to which Lot fled with his daughters. They discover what appear to be tar pits, again mentioned in the Bible. Also on this amazing itinerary are visits to the great fortress of Mount Masada, Mamre, where Abraham saw God and his angels, Abraham's well, and Qumran, discovery site of the oldest recorded Bible. Simon's crew this time consisted of Einar, veteran cameraman of previous trips, and one new face, Peter Newsome, a friend. The team finally boarded their long-awaited flight to Israel, and the excitement was tangible. Were they really going to see these places for themselves, and how would they feel? Would it change their understanding of the Bible? Would they return different people? The Bible often says, "Seek and you will find," and they were about to do just that. After breakfast the following morning, the group hired a taxi to take them to a place called Hebron, Abraham's home according to the Bible. Hebron contains the most ancient site in Jewish history, second only in importance to the Temple on the Mount in Jerusalem. It is a tomb named Machpelah, Tomb of the Patriarchs. The Bible says that Abraham purchased a cave to bury his wife Sarah and an adjoining field. Abraham was considered a friend of God in Arabic, Al-Khalil, literally, the friend of God. The word Hebron is derived from the Hebrew word haver, meaning friend. Abraham resided here when he arrived in Canaan, and King David was anointed here, where he reigned for 7 years. Isaac was born in Hebron, as was Jonah, and Arab legend has it that the stone foundations were laid by King Solomon himself. Abraham insisted on paying the going rate for the site. He, his wife Sarah, Isaac, Jacob, and wives Rebekah and Leah are buried here. Only Jacob's wife is missing. She died bearing Joseph in Bethlehem. The Bible says Sarah lived for 127 years and died in Kiriath Arba, that is Hebron, in the land of Canaan. Genesis 23. Now Abraham went to mourn for Sarah and to weep over her. Then Abraham rose from beside his dead wife and spoke to the Hittites. He said, "I am an alien and a stranger among you. Sell me some property for a burial site here so that I can bury my dead." The Hittites replied to Abraham, "You are a mighty prince among us. Bury your dead in the choicest of our tombs. None of us will refuse you." Abraham said, "Sell me the cave of Machpelah, which belongs to him and is at the end of his field. Ask him to sell it to me for the full price of a burial site among you." The Bible says that Abraham was offered the site free of charge, but he insisted on paying the full price of 400 shekels in silver. When the time came, he buried his wife Sarah in the cave. Simon found it amazing that shekels were still the currency of Israel today. Throughout the Byzantine, Arab, Mameluke, and Ottoman empires, This whole area has been the scene of war and unrest. Given this history, the wisdom of going there was discussed by the group. Einar and Simon were by now on their 4th visit to the area and fairly confident. It was decided they would go. A building built by Herod 2,000 years ago now covers the cave. The walls are 50 to 60 feet high and said to resemble the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. The shrine is at present used as a mosque, and the building consists of 3 rooms containing richly decorated cenotaphs. These are covered in green tapestries, worked with inscriptions and verses. It is believed that they stand exactly above the tombs. Many violent incidents have occurred in this place. In May 1980, 6 Jewish students were killed and 20 wounded by Palestinians. In February 1994, 29 Muslim worshippers were killed and a further 129 wounded when a Jewish gunman opened fire in the building. The bullet marks can be seen today. Suffice to say, the general mood of the group was one of caution. Here then lie Abraham, Isaac, Sarah, and Jacob. Then Abraham breathed his last and died at a good old age, an old man full of years, and he was gathered to his people. His sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him in the cave of Machpelah near Mamre, in the field of Ephron, son of Zohar the Hittite, the field Abraham had bought from the Hittite. There Abraham was buried with his wife Sarah. There are other significant sites of religious and historical interest at Hebron, including the tombs of Othniel. Buried here are Ben-Kamaz, first judge of Israel, Avner Benner, general and confidant to King Saul and David. Also there are Ruth and Jesse, great-grandmother and father to King David respectively. After they were given a guided tour by an earnest and charming guide, whose English accent they were sadly unable to decipher, the group went in search of Abraham's Oak. This turned out to be a short drive away and was signed Plain of Mamre, Abraham's Oak. This is believed to be the area where the Lord and 2 angels visited Abraham's camp and informed him that he would have a son named Isaac. Abraham built an altar here. Genesis 13 verse 18 tells us, "So Abraham moved his tents and went to live near the great trees of Mamre at Hebron, where he built an altar to the Lord." When the team arrived at the site, however, they found the gates locked and were reduced to peering through an iron gate. Was there still an altar there? The group moved to yet another site, that of Abraham's well. Still in the area of the great oaks of Mamre, where Abraham had his tents and flocks, the well still remains. Herod the Great built a wall around the entire area with the well in the corner, and in 325 AD, Christians built a church on the site. The group is standing in the ruins of the church, with Herod's 2-meter thick wall and Abraham's well still in evidence. It may have been used as a place of worship and was reconsecrated by Constantine. All present felt somewhat moved, being so close to a civilization from 3,900 years ago. The name Mamre is taken from a Canaanite chieftain who, together with Abraham, pursued Kedorlaomer to save Lot. The story is told in Genesis 14, verse 13. The group felt most disappointed at not seeing Abraham's oak and decided to try again. This time, the tour guide managed to locate the key holder for the gates, and the group walked down a long path which ended in a walled area. A very ancient and gnarled oak tree stands behind railings, supported by various means. According to tradition, it is opposite the very spot where Abraham dwelt in his tent when the angels promised him a son and heir. Here also he negotiated with Ephron the Hittite for Sarah's burial cave. Josephus is probably referring to it in Jewish Antiquities 110 number 4, where he writes, "Now Abraham dwelt near the oak called Ajiges." The place is in Canaan and is not far from Hebron. The exact age of the tree is not known, but it is certainly the oldest that anyone in the group had seen. Due to its great age, it has to be supported by both metal frames and wooden props. Genesis 18. The Lord appeared to Abraham near the great trees of Mamre, while he was sitting at the entrance of his tent in the heat of the day. Abraham looked up and saw 3 men standing nearby. While they ate, he stood near them under a tree. The Lord said to Abraham, "I will surely return to you about this time next year, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son." Is it possible that this is the very tree? It is certainly very, very old. They left the area and drove through Hebron itself, bearing in mind that it would look somewhat different after nearly 4,000 years. In Simon's last documentary, he did not visit the other 3 cities of the plain, Admah, Zeboam, and Zoar, the place to which Lot and his family fled. The question is, does anything remain of these places? And if so, where are they? Approaching the Dead Sea from the opposite shore to Sodom and Gomorrah, the group noticed what appeared to be unnatural shapes and shadows in the bright sunlight. It was suggested to Einar that they take a closer look, and they left the vehicle. Having a 4-wheel drive this time had enabled them to cover much more ground. Travel on foot in this area is completely exhausting. A particularly strange shape had caught Simon's eye, and he and Peter climbed toward it. The top was completely flat,